To order at 6:33. Welcome to this summary version of the ad hoc bond committee. Thank you so much for coming back to join us. I think I don't remember when we last met, but there was snow on the ground. So since we completed our report and it was accepted by the full school board, that report was sent on through the oversight of our admin team to engage with some folks who we had already been working with previously on doing some drawings for us on what it might look like to do some expansion updates in our district, particularly the campus around Levy Hill, and to better meet the needs of our students. So tonight I am going to try to do very little talking and just facilitate this meeting in which we're going to hear from some folks at WVRC and at Civitas on potential proposed plans for inside the building, expansions to the building, and outside on our fields. Also some other things that would be impacted that would improve things for us, such as parking and the like. So we will hear from those folks in turn, then open it up to a discussion of our committee. So the sort of idea tonight is that this is the first pass at making this recommendations come to life. So the board has already voted to have a referendum in September is the goal with back to school. That will include some form of this, and will also include our air quality question in hopes of sewing up to that, that we have the opportunity with those matching funds from the state revolving renovation fund. So our space between now and then is to have a plan that we can get real numbers for, that we can get from the public, and that we can make happen to get their yay or nay in September. So this is the sort of first pass at that. Our work is to say if it meets our recommendations or not, give feedback, and then the next step would hopefully be to engage, get some final stuff, some numbers, and engage with the public. So I would invite everyone to ask clarifying questions as you go about what you're seeing, and then in case if there's any questions for understanding. And then let's have sort of an open discussion at the end. One more just point of clarity is that the folks that helped get us here were largely stakeholders at the school and people who had also participated very heavily in this committee, which is awesome. Diane, Dr. King, Sadie, Emily, Nate, so I think we had some really great representation into making these things happen. Am I leaving anything out, folks who have been on the ride? No. Okay, so I'd love to turn it over to Mike from WVRC, who's going to talk about the inside.
So first off, thanks for letting us be here today to kind of review the project with you. We've been having a number of meetings with folks to kind of fine tune these concepts, really some test fits to kind of see what's going to work where, and then pulling all the information we're receiving from these meetings and kind of digesting stuff, bringing it back again, going it over again, and working things out. So we got to a point where we really wanted to bring it back to this larger group to make sure we're heading in the right direction with the concepts we have laid out. So this is kind of the overall view of the school. Again, I'm Mike Johanning, WVRC. This is Jennifer Richard, WVRC. So we'll walk through this and hopefully answer a lot of your questions and show you what we have today. So what you're seeing on the screen right here now is kind of shading in areas of the building where we're going to be touching. So as I mentioned, we've been looking at a number of places where some of these additions could work. So right now we're showing the gymnasium off to this kind of tan color off to this side. we've been looking at things for the gymnasium, whether or not it worked better at some other wings in the building, making that connection. But really, as we're working with the site, we're kind of honed in on this area. Kind of works best for getting access over into the gymnasium, and also works better in conjunction with the existing gymnasium. The existing gym sits right here, so we can get some services between the two that are shared between both spaces. So the tan color is all addition area, so looking at addition for the gym, some bathrooms, and we'll zoom in on these so you can kind of see it, just want to show it from a big picture point of view. But then coming into the existing space, renovating some space here for additional locker rooms, renovating the current gym lobby, and then renovating the existing gym locker room. So there's some parity there, bringing them up to speed a little bit so the finishes in there are a little bit nicer than how they are now. Opposite side of the building is the auditorium addition. Again, we looked at whether or not this was the best spot for it, whether or not it made sense to bring it off the classroom wing, whether or not it made sense to come off the front of the building, right? We looked at these pieces and how it was going to impact the site. And again, we really came back to and focused on this side of the building for again, taking advantage of proximity to other spaces in the building and other renovations we're going to do. So right at the end, this line here where it goes from this kind of this tan color over the other colors is really the end of the existing building. So we're going to be going into the current band and band classrooms for some renovation, go onto the stage for some renovation work, renovations inside the cafeteria. A lot of that, we're going to be keeping some of that existing pieces in the cafeteria in place, and we'll go through that. Reworking the serving portion of the kitchen so that we really can improve what's happening with the servery area of the kitchen, and then also the kitchen office as well. The cooking part of the kitchen really in decent shape, so kind of leaving that portion alone. So that's kind of the big picture, overall scale of things, looking at things from way far out. We'll zoom in on some areas here and go through them. So I'll let Jen walk through the auditorium.
So I started left to right. I know you all started with looking at athletics first and then wanting to get some parity with other programs within the school and looking at the cafeteria, but I started left to right in the way I set these PDFs up. So first looking at the performing arts area. So the addition here is an auditorium, just trying to right size that for the number of seats that you'll need in most of your performances. Getting a stage that is approximately the same width of your proscenium opening now. It's very similar. What's different is some of the support spaces, so to have some storage that's behind the stage opening versus on your stage the way you have that now to get a little bit more functional use out of the stage. In the back is the band room behind the stage, so there's proximity when they're starting to rehearse for performances. Or if they have small ensembles, they could use that stage during the curriculum and during the day as part of the music program as flex space for other musical groups that are having classes. There's a flexible room there that could be used as a dressing room behind stage or a green room. It's just a little bit of extra space so that you can have flexibility in the use. We'll have some toilet rooms here to serve the new auditorium, a scene shop for developing any scenes. I know some of that is stored off from your current stage, so this would give a little bit more elbow room for them to leave sets standing up. If they've got tall sets, they can be made, and sometimes you repaint them, but instead of having to put them away in a closet, they can stand vertical and be protected a bit better for use. Thinking about the direct connection to the stage, so that if they're building scenes, they can get them right onto the stage and off if that's a play that's happening, but also being used for music. And then continuing down, this is back into the existing building. So what was locker rooms once upon a time and is now your band and chorus rooms, that would be repurposed for the scene shop. A couple of bathrooms that would be accessible for those fields that are right back there. A space here for offices that we're displacing when we look at the servery, but the servery will be expanded for student use. There are some offices that we need to make a new home for. Those may end up here as we start looking at the program, but there's some potential for where those are relocated just to test fit. Starting to look at a chorus room here, a music library, so any of that sheet music can be stored in high density storage to protect it and be a library for both band and chorus. We have some space here that can be used for additional drama storage, additional dressing rooms. We do have these bathrooms here. hard to take bathrooms away, so we might upgrade those finishes, but have a dressing room in proximity to existing bathrooms and make use of space that you already have. I think that's everything that's in the auditorium area, anything I left out.
How many seats in the auditorium?
This is showing 450.
Is it possible to make it bigger and peek around a little bit? It's
It's a drive. I need a cruise director.
In the scene shop, are those little lines, are those the stalls for changing, is that?
In the scene shop, it's a pipe system that allows the sets, the scenery to stand up in them.
Okay.
So we had some actual changing stalls shown, and we reworked some things after the last meeting. So we have a room that would be able to put that into. We just haven't placed them in this current layout.
Yeah, so here's, you're looking at the front of the stage thrust, right out through here. A series of stage curtains, as these wavy lines are coming back through in the full depth of the stage. It's a really nice opportunity to get some storage directly off the stage. So it's right now your stage is being used for storage, right? So getting that stuff off the stage so the stage can really be used when you need it. So getting that stuff directly off the stage and taking advantage of a storage room right there. These direct paths into these spaces, this is something we talked about when we had our meetings, and Emily brought it up too, is that, it's just not a matter of having these openings that are 6 foot wide too. These openings need to be tall, right? So it's not a regular 6 foot wide door, it's a tall door too. So as things are being prepped or moved around, you have big instruments, it's nice to have these big ends to get through, but scenes that are being prepped back here have some big openings so you can go right through and right onto the stage without a lot of issues.
In the band room, what you're seeing is the little boxes around the perimeter of the room. Those would be like the Wanger acoustic instrument storage, so the instruments can be locked or set aside and protected away from the classroom space. And then that's just a test fit of how many students might sit and how they might sit around a teacher or instructor with a teaching while within a band class. But the instrument storage would be in the perimeter of the room, and those are acoustic cabinets that have properties meant to be open and lockable within the room.
It's a great space saver too, right? Because we've done a couple band rooms, and what we found is that rather than having these separate storage rooms where your instruments go, it's nice to kind of showcase these instruments a little bit. But at the same time, the storage pieces come with acoustical properties, as Jen mentioned. So taking advantage of that inside of the space.
And it still gives visibility for that instructor, the band teacher, to be able to see all the students when they're getting their instruments rather than being in a separate room, but they're still secure.
Could you say, okay, could you say where the dressing room space is? I didn't catch that, or where it's proposed potentially?
So there's a couple of opportunities. We have a room just below the band room that could be used as a green room off the back of the stage. It could also be used as a dressing area. And we can talk about whether we want curtain spaces or partitions, what they want to look like. And so we also have this room just north on this plan of the existing dressing room and bathrooms. So we could actually have an opening from the existing dressing room area up into that space. Right now, we've left that as a flexible room that could have more storage. We could do makeup mirrors and lights on, one of the walls. We can actually put partitions in if you want closed dressing areas, or if the students can make use of the bathrooms that are there. So we've had several meetings where we've done plan updates and talk, but there's still, this looks like a very finished hard line drawing. We're trying to right size the spaces so we can get accurate pricing for you. But we still would come back and have more conversations about what are the dressing rooms, where would they go, are they gendered, are they gender neutral, are they there's a lot of detail that we still have to work through. So this is not done, it's just trying to get it close.
Right. At the same time, we're trying to, make sure we're just not throwing square footage at it, right? We want to make sure we're tightening things where we can. So we started with the auditorium being a little bit bigger. We've actually scaled back the seats, kind of right-sized that for the size of the auditorium. One of the things Jen was just looking at was that plumbing count, right? Is the plumbing fixture count correct for the building? We had actually shown that a little bit larger initially as we did diving into plumbing code a little bit more. We found we could tighten that up a little bit. So again, looking at areas where we can save square footage where it makes sense.
That blank area below the seating, the brown area, what is that for?
It's an entry lobby, and that may be an area, so we're still looking at where the best place for that entry is in relationship to parking and the site. So we will need an area, especially in our climate, where inclement weather and the winter performances, for people to get in. If you have 450 people coming into a performance, they need a place to come in from outside before they go sit down. We may be able to make that, condense that a bit. And we've already made that smaller, but it's just an arrival zone that when people come in or they're leaving and they're waiting for their kiddos, there's gotta be a gathering spot for them to be able to gather.
And that's ticketing and concessions right here too. So we come in, and then obviously this is a sloped floor as you come through here. So the stage is going to be at like 3'9" or so. So you're going to need some ramping, some stairs to get back up the elevation, get stage height. So. And the thought process here with coming in, so here's the current end of the current corridor, here's the classroom wing here, right? So right now, with the thought being is that, your entrance into the backstage is through here. So we'd actually open that up, extend this corridor around, give you an opportunity to still secure the auditorium from the rest of the building. So that during the school day, unless something's happening in here, you can have the ability to secure the auditorium. And it goes vice versa, right? So if you're having an event and you don't want people coming into the school building, you can lock off the school building from things happening in the auditorium.
So, sorry, Gary, do you have a question?
What's the stage dimension?
I'll just zoom in here. So we've got right here on the drawing here.
Just trying to peer and see it.
The opening is 41 feet. for the
Proceeding
opening,
over.
and it's like 32 feet deep, not counting the thrust.
Right, it's 32.
Very similar to the opening and depth that you have now. I think there's a bit more length to it.
So it looks wider, but which makes it look shallow. That's all.
Yeah, I think this is close to 40 right now for the opening, the proscenium opening. Yeah, this is shown at 41. The other thing that we have included is the light locks coming from the back of stage. So as you have actors coming on and off, it also helps with acoustics. If you've got a pile of students and kiddos in the back waiting to go on stage, there's always things happening in the back. So just giving that light lock and sound difference for the back of stage versus front of stage. And also giving thought not just how scenes would come or instruments or acoustic shells that would be on your stage and how they would come onto stage, but also thinking about how students would pass so they wouldn't have to come into the public area. There would actually be a back of house kind of stage area as they're in the costumes and prepping to come up on stage. There's areas for them to kind of queue up.
Greg, you had something?
Yeah, how many restrooms, is there a net gain or a net loss of restrooms?
These restrooms are all added just to handle the performing arts.
Okay, and how many are there?
There's 6 fixtures for each, plus a family or non-gendered restroom, a single
Okay,
use.
so we'd be compliant and have space for everyone under regulations, okay?
Exactly. And again, that was the whole thought of making sure we have this bathroom bank on this side of the doors, right? So you're not having, during an event, people don't have to go in the rest of the school to use the bathrooms. It's all.
And can I skip ahead a bit to ask essentially the same question for locker rooms, gym space, same thing?
Yes.
Same thing.
Okay. And skipping ahead some more, that has to do with plumbing, or am I exceeding my,
Wait, plumbing's fine, skipping ahead, let's wait,
well, they're interconnected, you know, plumbing's connected to everything.
proceed.
So we got a leach field back there, and we're adding bathrooms and adding locker rooms, adding water. And I don't know where the intersection is for field work and the school work and the leach fields.
Right. Yeah, when our plumbing engineers are working with the civil engineers on the site work, they'll be making sure they're taking those plumbing counts into effect for your larger events, right? So whatever's happening in the Performing Arts Center, whatever happening in the gym. Obviously, your school population is really not changing because of these pieces. Maybe everyone will say, geez, I want to go to Gray now, because of what they just did. So, but yeah, those are taken into account when that field is sized.
Okay.
All right, we had Stan and then,
Is that a band pit in that corner there? And do you have, like, if we're doing a musical, do you have a band pit area?
Not an orchestra pit.
oh, but our musical usually does have a small live band.
Right now, so the shaded seats in the middle on the front of the floor plan, those could be removable, but that doesn't, there's some effort to remove them in a place that would need to be stored for them, but right now there's not an orchestra pit that's dedicated for that. Is that something we need to include, and if so, how many students?
So there's usually a pit orchestra for the 3-piece musical, and that's usually about 10,
I
12
would just say maximum 15 pieces, probably.
Do you think it'd be adequate to do a handle of removable seating?
I'm wondering if, could it be, probably yes, but could it be, you've been in there, you know the kind of funky side bits? The band usually sits in one of those funky side bits. Like if we could even do a couple of removable rows off to the side and not the middle, because I think then you make those center front row
There's
crowd
dead
there.
center is gonna be too loud for the people
Yeah.
around it, you know,
Yeah.
they need to be sort of either sunken or off to the side and they're chambered in, you know?
Yeah, we
Off
can
to
do
the
that.
side is what they do, yeah. And then, it would probably be once a year, we'd go to the effort, for a couple weeks and then put it back, but that is a good point.
Yeah, we can make that adjustment.
And then,
My question is, going to Dr. King or somebody on the school board, does that auditorium, would that afford all of the students in the high school to be able to attend something at this point?
a full school-wide assembly with faculty and stuff, you would need 700.
But, I'm sorry, to extend your question, what were you thinking of?
I just was curious if that was part of the calculations and the numbers. Where does that happen now, in the gym? or-
Many school districts make the decision to have a school-wide event like what you're describing in their gymnasium.
Yes, so does the gym?
That keeps the
gym
theater, that
take
keeps the
that?
theater,
Yes.
that keeps the performing space more intimate.
because then it would be oversized and very expensive,
Right.
98% of the time.
I was curious as to why you have one large band room. When I was in school, when I was in orchestra, we had smaller rooms because they would break out the different parts of the band to rehearse in soundproof rooms.
So we have some of those also that maybe we didn't point out well. So we have a couple of spaces. So we have 2 practice rooms that are within the band room. So those would be soundproof with a soundproof door that a couple of students could go in to meet. Then we also have these 2 other rooms that are flexible. Right beside it to the left, we have a green room that could also be used as a small ensemble or practice room. We can set these rooms up to be very flexible. And then we have this other room that we're talking about potentially as storage or dressing. But depending on the need, as we start to refine this floor plan, that could be split in half and made it as a separate room if needed, or we could set it up so it had acoustic properties that if there were an ensemble, it would give some flex space for those smaller groups to practice.
Yes, but you would want to make sure that the instruments, when they're rehearsing, they're separate from the chorus. And it's all soundproof and baffled and stuff.
Yep, absolutely, and they have a special door that has different ratings than a regular classroom door, so yes. We put acoustic panels on the wall, we use different ceiling tiles.
That's a good point about acoustic separation you made too, right? Because I think that's why we have these kind of intervening spaces between all these areas too. So we're not just relying purely on the acoustic walls that we're going to have, which we get a pretty good acoustic rating on the wall construction, but putting intervening spaces between them to, again, help that acoustic buffer between all these areas. Good point.
Any other,
I think you mentioned it, so just clarifying I think you mentioned over here would be taking some of the office space that we have.
Yeah.
And you mentioned splitting. Can you just clarify that real quick?
Yeah, so, go ahead.
No, we're gonna go to the cafeteria next, but over in the cafeteria kitchen area where the new servery would be created, there are some existing offices now, and we need to find a place for them. So we're still working through if this is the best home for them based on their function and what space they need, but we were just test fitting. We have an opportunity here where we can carve out some offices for those to be relocated.
But essentially we'd be splitting that space up, is that what you're?
We hope to move the whole suite
Oh, the
over
whole
as
thing,
one.
okay,
Yeah.
gotcha, all right.
This is configured differently than their existing space, but I think they might have just taken over some space and it might not be the best right size fit for them, so we're just testing
I got you.
where they might be able to relocate. And also there's a custodial storage, because right when you go into the kitchen now on the other side of the mechanical access, there's custodial storage, so we need to find a new home for that too. So we've got that located here and it would be accessed off the corridor, so they wouldn't have to go into intervening spaces and can have easy access to their equipment and things.
Nicole, a benefit to having some of the offices here is there's an exterior entrance and exit, so it wouldn't be, for example, if it was special services, it wouldn't be traffic through the high
Right.
school. They could have their-
Yeah, that's nice.
Oh, they could use that.
But the green is existing correct, right now, right?
Right,
This is
renovation,
existing space,
yeah.
we renovated, that's
Yeah.
right.
So that little white space at the bottom is actually existing and it's set up like that already. And then the green is like its footprint, but it doesn't, but we changed what it looks like. Any other clarifying questions on this space?
I do, I don't follow drawings, that's why I'm not in that field. But all that brown area, is that, in the back of it, is the existing stage, or?
Yeah, so.
Right,
So
yeah.
if you turn this around, that's where,
Yeah, so the existing stage sits right here. This is where the existing stage is. So, and here's.
And I can't say my hand. The existing stage opening is right here. So this space is actually the stage now. This is the cafeteria now, we're gonna keep it cafeteria, you can start to see the cafeteria tables, but right now, this is the stage opening. And then this is where the band rooms are now.
So it'd be infilling stage opening, taking advantage of the existing stage space, which is great because it's higher volume, great for the chorus rooms. And then as we go back into the current music spaces, repurposing those, they're a little bit industrial, it's kind of block walls in there. They're tough spaces because they're the locker rooms originally, right? So, and then go into our addition.
This is the addition. Does that help?
And it's going up towards where like the garage is.
that's what I figured. You said you're not gonna give the square footage of that addition, or? Did I get that earlier, or at this point, or we're gonna get that later on?
The square footage?
Yeah.
Over that bigger slide. On the slide before. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
It's like 18,000.
Yeah, so it's almost just under 19,000 square feet for this kind of tan area in the addition.
And what is that existing teal
Square footage
square
wise?
footage?
I'd say about 16.
Okay, so it's very similar in the space we're used to as the cafeteria and stage and music rooms kind of clumped onto the back.
Yeah, very similar.
Any other questions about this? And I'm realizing it might also be wise to take a few minutes in between the presentations and discussions if people want to, take a moment to absorb some of the bigger dramas in the new groups. All right,
Okay.
great, thanks.
So kind of keep moving along here. So I'll let Jen, but I'll go ahead.
So we've also talked a few times about the cafeteria. We've started with, I think actually there was a thought first to do an addition in the middle of the kind of carved out area there. We weren't really going to get the servery and the number of seats that we needed in there. We then evolved into looking at the cafeteria and just flattening it all out. But the space is a really interesting space right now, and it adds some diversity in how you could do some seating arrangements with the different heights of flooring. So the thought at the moment is to leave the floor the way that it is as the two different heights, which could add some interest in the different seating that you could offer. So here we're showing about 280 seats, and essentially what we've done is closed off the stage opening. So the stage opening is right here. That stage now will become core as a support space for the music program. We would still have some stairs and ramping that would get us down to this lower seating. We're showing a variety of tables. So we have some that are great for facilities and quick change of how the space is used. Those could fold up and have the attached seats. That gives you a lot of density with lots of kiddos in there. Not everybody wants to sit at a big table of 8. So making use of some of those built-in benches you have on that curved wall now, and maybe getting some cafe tables that would offer some smaller group settings and make use of what is existing, because it is a nice space. We could have some loose tables. That also offers us an opportunity to have handicap accessible seating at every level. You could just pull a chair away, and anyone that was in a wheelchair or a walker or something assisted could sit at the tables. Making use of those small alcoves. If kiddos don't want to sit mainstream in the big, group of people and they want to sit to the side, they could still be in the dining area and have a separate seating area. Showing an opportunity where you can again have small tables. You could even introduce some of the cafe height tables, whichever you have up on your screen.